Don't miss.
What's popping, gang? We're back. I've been a fan of Jordan Peterson for quite some time now, so let's get right into it. We're gonna react to his most savage comebacks of all time. So, without any further ado, let's go. Don't forget, hit that hit that subscribe, like, leave some comments. We're new to this, but we'll get there. Let's get it.
How much responsibility do you feel that you have, particularly guys the alt-right, who, as you say, some of them have enjoyed your work and say,
No,
I'm not one of you guys. I'm not with you guys.
They haven't enjoyed my work.
I've definitely read bits on the internet.
Read more.
Do you
And let me just say, Jordan Peterson is a wholesome individual, so for him to react in such a savage manner, you must have pressed him too far, as most people do.
think a trans woman is a real woman?
I don't really like the way those questions are formulated. You know, I don't know what that means. What do you mean a real woman?
Well,
She
I'm
doesn't-
asking you, in your mind, you know, it depends what you think a real woman is, but do you think a trans woman is a woman?
No.
Why not?
You know, with this question, I recently watched Matt Walsh's What is a Woman documentary. I was utterly dumbfounded at how overly complicated they made the question to be. I mean, in Africa, we don't really have these problems. We like to keep things simple. A woman has the ability to give birth, and we move on. We do not try and impose or press other people to believe in what we believe. That is just true nature. She can give birth, then she's a woman. If not, then it is not a woman. Move on. Keep it simple.
Because I think that women are capable, generally speaking, of having babies, and they have female genitalia, and they have an XX chromosome, and I think the biological markers are relevant.
I'm interested in people being able to have different choices and having equality of outcome.
Aha, well, so the overwhelming proportion of people who are in prisons are male. Now, do you want to equalize that, just out of curiosity? What about bricklayers? They're 99% male. And we've got about 3/4 of the population now in universities in the humanities and social sciences are female.
Yeah.
Are we going to equalize that? And men work longer hours. They work more dangerous jobs. They're more likely to move. They're more likely to work outside. They're more likely to participate in jobs in the STEM fields that are scalable. They make more money for those reasons. And that's all hidden under the idea that the reason that men and women make different amounts of money is because of their gender. It's a very simplistic analysis.
Why?
You know, just to place more emphasis on what he just said. Not placing more emphasis. I recall watching that interview, and the lady that was presenting opposing ideas, she was not able to deal with all the points that were presented her by Mr. Peterson. She simply brushed them off and went on to purport her ideologies to the audience without acknowledging everything that Jordan said. But as you can see, Jordan is studied. He always has facts. He brings it to the table, and she could not back it up, which is what happens for the most part when someone has a discussion with Jordan Peterson.
Why are you against the use of alternate pronouns?
I'm against the use of legislation to determine what words that myself and other people are required to utter.
But would you use alternate pronouns if a student asked you to?
I think I've made my position on that clear already.
Well, perhaps not to our audience at home who are just being introduced to this. Would you use alternate
No.
pronouns? And why not?
Because I don't believe that other people have the right to determine what language I use, especially when it's backed by punitive legislation. And when the words that are being required are the constructions, they're artificial constructions of people I regard as radical ideologues whose viewpoint I do not share.
Until women got full legal rights.
To add on to that, I believe that the freedom we hold nowadays is extremely thin, to the point where we have to fight for that which is so thin already. And I understand when he takes such a stance, because it is one thing to prohibit saying certain things, and it is another thing to force you to say certain things. I don't know if you guys understand me, but yeah, It is a whole different ball game if someone comes up to me and says, "Listen, you're not allowed to say that," or "You shouldn't say that," and someone else comes up to me and says, "This is what you should say." That's infringing on my freedom, from my understanding. You cannot tell me what to say. I am my own man. I formulate my own thoughts and opinions. And of course, if we're in a discussion, I would like to present those without being interrupted or being told that I am not supposed to say what I'm saying.
Rights, they could own property for themselves, they could work. Essentially, they were owned. They were first.
Let's add to that, of course, there's certain things that we cannot say. But then again, it is different to being told what to say.
Owned by their fathers and then by their husbands.
Status to the domination by men.
Yeah.
You already said that you thought that what emancipated women primarily in the 20th century was technological revolution.
No, not primarily, but that's one of two. I think that's
it's
two
not
things.
Primarily, eh?
No,
you don't think the pill was a primary force in the emancipation of women,
I think
or the invention of tampons, let's say, or the provision of proper sanitary facilities, toilets, and that sort of thing. You're thinking instead it was the action of courageous feminists in the 1920s that produced a social revolution that overthrew the patriarchy. That's your theory.
Yeah, I think
that's a foolish theory.
Let me just say this, that I am extremely fond of the manner in which Jordan communicates. He's a well-studied individual. He composes his arguments and structures them in a manner that allows you to concisely understand what it is that he's trying to get across. He keeps things clear for everyone to understand. So when people do not understand or pretend that they do not understand, it completely baffles me because he is absolutely structured. He should serve as an example for everyone, that you should know exactly what it is that you're talking about and stay constantly learning so that you formulate your own thoughts and ideas and opinions so that you don't adopt the popular mainstream ideas, which are extremely contagious.
That's pure narcissism at work, by the way. You know, to hijack an event like this that other people put time and effort into, and to use their civility of the crowd and the civility of the organizers as an excuse to blatantly yell out your ill-informed opinions is no way to conduct a civil dialogue. It's absolutely appalling. The people who do that should be embarrassed.
Now imagine this, you waking up to go to your workplace and an individual who's not even a colleague, does not even know the business you're in, or does not know what it is that needs to be done, interrupts the individual interrupts your progress or interrupts your workflow just for their own benefit. Imagine that. You've been called to do a certain job, or you're doing something that you have prepared to present to the masses, and someone who has absolutely nothing to do with that which you're trying to demonstrate interrupts you for no reason. I believe that is, as he mentioned, absolute narcissism. I believe that at this point he was probably preparing to deliver a speech but was unpleasantly interrupted by attention seekers. You have to applaud him for maintaining a firm professional posture and not allowing those individuals to pollute or cloud his thoughts. Kudos. Props to Mr. Peterson.
My idea of the patriarchy is a system of male dominance of society.
Yeah, but that's not my sense of the patriarchy.
So what's yours?
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
Very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. people who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate.
But I could say equally well that most rape victims are women. Terrible things happen to people of both sexes.
And you
I don't understand people that do that in arguments. They do it often, and it usually goes like this: when opposing views dismantle your core beliefs, people resort to conflating issues just to prove a point, to prove that they're right. And the statement that they make has no direct link to the primary problem that was being addressed in the first place. So it makes no sense. That is someone that is absolutely weak, because they cannot stick to what was being addressed primarily, in my opinion.
You could say that with perfect utility, but that doesn't provide any evidence for the existence of a male-dominated patriarchy. I would say that anybody with more than a cursory knowledge of 20th century history who dares to claim simultaneously that they have compassion for the downtrodden and that they're Marxists are revealing either an ignorance of history that's so astounding that it's actually a form of miracle, or a kind of malevolence that's so reprehensible that it's almost unspeakable. Because we already ran the equity experiment over the course of the 20th century, and we already know what the Marxist doctrines have done for oppressed people all around the world, and the answer to that mostly was imprison them, enslave them, work them to death, or execute them. And as far as I can tell, that's not precisely commensurate with any message of compassion. Sorry, tried that, didn't work. We got 100 million corpses to prove it, and that's plenty for me. And if it's not enough for you, well then you should do some serious thinking, either about your historical knowledge or about your moral character.
Question for Professor Peterson. Why do you feel that someone's personal gender identity and pronouns infringes your free speech? Can one not also argue, based on your interpretation, that professors can use racial slurs in their classroom and that the inability to do so would violate their freedom of speech?
There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say.
Facts. Is that not what I just said? There's a big difference, a tumultuous difference in saying or telling you that there's things that you cannot say and there are things that you must say. Big difference in there. Hence why I understand his stance he takes on this subject.
And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest. And that's that.
Once again, this is an example of someone who is firm in his beliefs, has done his research, and knows not to be swayed by mass media. Stay grounded. Picture a ocean full of turmoil and storms and waves just going about, and you being that solid rock. I believe that Peterson is that solid rock that is unshaken throughout the storm. And that's how everyone should aim to develop themselves, to that point of not being foolish and completely ignorant or not having empathy, but having your own thoughts and beliefs. Do your research, find out more, see who's wrong, see who's right, and make sure that everything you do is formulated from your own thought process and not a process from everyone else.
This whole patriarchy thing, I think you have no idea how pernicious and dangerous it is.
Well, no, I don't. I really don't. Go on.
Throughout history have fundamentally cooperated to push back against the absolute catastrophe of existence. A terrible death rate, the probability of chronic starvation, early death, disease, the difficulty of raising children with all the death that was associated with that. And to look backwards in time and say, well, basically what happened was men took the upper hand and persecuted women.
in this tyrannical patriarchy is it's absolutely dreadful misreading of history. It's a terrible thing to teach young women, and it's a horrible thing to inflict upon men.
When the
Knowing that lady, just based on the bits and pieces that I've watched from this specific Savage moments, she probably resorted to, oh, he's hitting me with some more facts. Let me throw in another issue in it just to try and prove a point. I'm sure that was probably her reaction. I should probably go watch the whole interview before making assumptions, but based from what I've been fed, I believe that is more than right.
Marxists say, well, that wasn't real Marxism. What it really means, and I've thought about this for a long time, it's the most arrogant possible statement anyone could ever make. It means if I would have been in Stalin's position, I would have ushered in the damn utopia instead of the genocidal massacres, because I understand the doctrine of Marxism and everything about me is good. It's like, well, think again, sunshine. You don't understand it. You don't understand it. And you're not that good. And if the power was in your hands, assuming you had the competence, which you don't, you wouldn't have done any better. And even if you had, there would have been someone else waiting right behind you to shoot you the first time you actually tried to do anything good. And that's what happened to all the old guard who ran the damn revolution. Stalin rounded them all up and shot them, along with their families and millions of other people.
And remember, when I say that, you should develop yourself to an extent that you know what it is that you're talking about, you're solid in your ideas, and you adopt your own thought processes and beliefs. That in no way means that you set yourself out to go and prove others wrong, that you're the only righteous one. No. It is highly essential to know what it is that you're talking about, but it is also highly essential to be empathetic and listen to others and see where it is that they get their ideas from, why it is that they behave in the manners they do, so that we can avoid clashes. While it's almost impossible to avoid clashes because people are always going to have opposing views, but do not go out and bash other people, because you're probably on a journey to develop yourself to the best of your abilities, and that other person probably hasn't started that journey yet. So if you were to go and impose all your beliefs on that person, they probably will look at you as someone that's a lunatic. So allow people to speak too, but being solid will prevent you from adopting their ideologies. I think it makes sense what I just said. That was completely just but I hope so. Anyways, we're done for now. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back.
Yeah, hey, Tony Franco, it's a wave.